How's it going? I guess I'm the only thing between you guys and dinner, unless you've already had dinner. So I'm Steve. I'm here to talk about securing Azure and Office, specifically administration. Organizations today have a lot of concerns when it comes to protecting their organization from themselves, essentially. Administrators get access to lots of things, whether it be administrative credentials in Azure or Office or any of the control plane. Typically in an organization, there are lots of ways in which individuals can get admin credentials. One could be through leaked passwords. The other could be through insiders, so social engineering. A way in which users get passwords is just through phishing attacks. Being able to ask somebody or send somebody an email with a link to a malicious website where they're prompted to enter their credentials. And then obviously partner staff. So you have contractors or partners that are working with your organization that have persistent access to roles and resources within your organization, and they're there forever. There aren't really a lot of tools out there that help cultivate or ask for those individuals to attest that they still need access. In addition, in the past, the way that organizations operated for Azure or for Active Directory was you would get global admin or domain admin privileges, and then you would have it until somebody said, hey, this person doesn't actually need these. And that could be through a quarterly compliance or internal audit. Similar to Azure, individuals get access to Exchange or to SharePoint, valuable resources that have documents or plans, and those individuals have those permissions until they're asked to give those permissions back, or you have a tool that can go in and revoke those permissions. So what we've heard from our customers is they have too many administrators. These administrators have privileges throughout the organization, and they're overprivileged. So they have the power to do pretty much anything that they want to do. Global admin. A lot of our customers say, why do I need to use global admin in order to manage Exchange or to configure MFA or multi-factor authentication? And we also lack the visibility about what those administrators do. So with privileged identity management, you have the capability to make individuals eligible for privileged roles. Eligible means that they have to do something in order to activate those roles. In addition, we support time-bound properties. So these time-bound properties essentially enable you to manage the life cycle of these administrators, essentially putting an start and end date for those that may coincide with a statement of work or some sort of project that you have them on. In addition, you have the ability to track, log, and audit all of their activity. Unique to privileged identity management, and something that we've just released, is the ability to do essentially session-based activity monitoring. So you have the capability to know when a user activated. You can see exactly what they've done within Azure and correlate that activity to when they activated the role and when they deactivated the role. And I'll go ahead and demonstrate some of that stuff today too. And lastly, before I get to the demo, I also wanted to mention that we're also looking at ways in which we can enhance this capability for those of you who use Office. So Office will be introducing later, there's another session later this week that talks about Office having the capability to do task-based access. So essentially, if you've ever had to do a journaling rule before, you'll be able to lock down journaling rules and other tasks within Exchange through approval workflow, similar to the approval workflow that we've introduced within PIM. So I'm going to jump over here to my demo environment. And what you can see here is I've got two categories of roles. This is the redesigned UI for privileged identity management. You've got eligible roles and active roles, as well as eligible and active and expired roles for Azure. And within those roles, I can activate a particular role. I'm going to activate the contributor role. And one of the new things that we're introducing with Azure, Privileged Identity Management for Azure, is this concept of scoped activation. So something that we don't offer today in Azure AD is the ability to identify what exactly you want to do with that role when you activate it. And so this is something that's new to Azure. So right now I'm activating the contributor role for a subscription. We'll call this subscription Wingtip Toys Prod. And instead of activating the contributor role for the subscription, maybe I only need it for a well-defined scope of resources. Maybe that's resource groups. So instead of me having the autonomy to go and restart VMs in every resource group that's contained within a subscription, I can choose a particular resource group and update that activation to be confined to a specific container, as opposed to having that broad access or autonomous access. I then input a justification, and then I click Activate. Now you can do several things with this. You can lock this down with approval workflows, so you can designate specific users to have to approve those requests. You could also set the default maximums. So I'll jump over to the role settings so that you guys can see what it is you can and can't do within each of these settings. So we have two categories for role settings. We have assignment and activation. The assignment policies apply to when you've been assigned to an Azure resource, and the activation policies apply when you need to activate that privileged role. In the assignments, we want to provide the parity and the capability that you would have in Azure for assigning people to roles by allowing them to be permanent. But we also want you to have the capability to say, maybe they should automatically expire every 6 months. And you can change that to, we provide a multitude of options, anywhere from as short as 15 days to a year. With one caveat is if you do allow permanent eligible assignments or permanent active assignments, those individuals or the users that get assigned or the groups that get assigned, you can change the end date yourselves. So we also give that flexibility during the assignment. And then in terms of the activation, we support up to 24 hours to be active in a particular role, unlike PIM for Azure Active Directory roles, which we support up to 72 hours. So we've heard from our customers that the roles within Azure, they wanted to limit to 24 hours. And then we also support the ability to lock down access to these resources with multi-factor authentication. So this is requiring people to perform that two-factor authentication in order to use those roles. And that goes hand in hand with some of the Azure, the virtual machine just-in-time access as well. So imagine you're using, from Azure Security Center, the Azure just-in-time access to a virtual machine, which essentially activates the ports that you need to access those particular VMs. With PIM as well, the better together story here is individuals that have roles in the network security group also have to activate that role in order to just-in-time access the VM. And you'll see more and more better together stories come along with Azure Privileged Identity Management and access to VMs with Azure credentials as well. And here, if I wanted to require approval to activate, I can choose a multitude of users and groups to approve those requests. Now, one of the things I mentioned earlier was the ability to correlate access, a particular user's access to their activation, as well as all the things that they do within Azure. And so we can get to that really easily by just clicking on Resource Audit. So here I'm an administrator. I have the capability to see all of this audit data, and we're filtering it by the last day. But if I wanted to look at the last month, there's been a lot of activity over the last month. We've been testing this out. You can see that all of this activity is going on within the resource, the subscription itself. But I also have specific users that are activating their role, and I can click on this activity link that will take me directly to the activity that's correlated with that particular user's role. And I want to find a user that might have some data. We'll just check this one out. So I didn't find a user that had actual Azure data, but the Azure audit log data would appear here under resource activities. But what you can see here is that this user activated their role and then deactivated just about 8 hours later. And again, you can export all of this data out of this environment into a CSV and transport it to any log aggregation tool that you'd like. We are also sending our Azure logs to the Azure Active Directory audit environment so that you can get that data there as well. When it comes to assigning roles, so a lot of you are probably wondering, how do I go about assigning somebody as eligible or active, and what's the difference? So if I wanted to assign somebody as a contributor here, I can just go ahead and add a user. And here I don't have to select the role, but I'll find a user here. And then you have we try and make this as streamlined as possible. So the individuals or the personas that are typically assigning roles in Azure are DevOps oriented, and they're really focused on trying to get users access to the resources that they need as soon as possible. And we don't want to encumber them by making them choose a whole lot of different features or functionality. So we try and make this as seamless as possible. We give them two different types of assignment types. We say eligible or active. So I'm going to choose eligible because I want this user to have to activate. And those settings that I was configuring on the previous page, I want those to apply when this user actually activates their role. And here, I know that this individual is only going to need access for about a month. So instead of this being a year, I'm going to go ahead and flip this back to May here. And so I don't have to worry that when I'm done assigning this user, they'll get this assignment for a month, and I won't have to remember to come in and take that user out of this role. And when my next quarterly audit comes along and they ask me to press this export button and get a list of the users that have access to this resource, I can be confident that that user is no longer there. So in addition to assigning users here from this experience, you also have the capability in this quick action column to do removes and updates. And an update is pretty simple and self-explanatory. So on the assigned or active roles tab, you can see here I have an option to remove, update, or extend. And that's something new that we're bringing to PIM as well. So within the environment, we're introducing this concept of extend and renew, and that is enabling end-user self-service. So in the past, you pretty much had to use an external management platform like ServiceNow or some IT management platform in order to facilitate the request for role or role assignments. So this is our first foray into that request process, where end users that have role assignments can actually request to extend, or renew expired roles themselves. And what that means is really, from an admin's perspective, I could just choose to extend this individual, but they could actually go in themselves and click extend, and it triggers our approval workflow. And so our administrators the administrators of this resource actually have to go in and approve and determine how long to extend or renew that particular role assignment. And before there's any questions, there is a difference between renewing a role assignment and reassigning somebody from an audit perspective. And lastly, we also have alerting and access reviews. So alerting is really helpful for determining how many owners have access to a subscription. Owners have the capability to not only create new subscriptions, but they can create new resources within Azure themselves. And that could impact the billing or the ability to delete resources or remove locks. And then from an access review perspective, I can choose to review who has that subscription owner access in my subscription. Now, when it comes to managing the permissions for Exchange, on the Azure Active Directory side, I can simply go into Azure Active Directory roles, and I can, if I am a global administrator or privileged role administrator, I can manage these role assignments, or I can choose to activate these roles. So if I am a security administrator, which would also give me access to security information within Office 365, as well as the service administrator. So if I wanted to activate the service admin in order to use the Office security and compliance portal, I could do so. And I wanted to point out something that we're introducing now as well within PIM for Azure AD roles, which is a custom activation start time. So in the past, when you activated roles for Azure Active Directory, you simply activated and you were active until the duration expired. We're introducing the capability for end users or the administrators who are activating to determine how long they need to be active for. So here, my administrator has configured the capability for me to be active for 7 hours, but my task, the change request that I put in, only requires me to be active for three hours. Maybe it's facilitating the migration of several mailboxes or enabling journaling rules or something like that. And I can go ahead and put in my information here. However, if I wanted to coordinate this with an approved change request that was scheduled for next Friday, I could do so by inputting next Friday's date and whatever time that change was approved for, and it would activate me at that date and time. So I could say 8:47 today with the current time zone, and I'll go ahead and activate. So that will go ahead and schedule me. Now, one of the great features that we're introducing with this is the ability to set multiple schedules. So we're not restricting you to scheduling just a single activation, but we'll allow you to schedule up to 10 consecutive activations. Those activations cannot overlap, so we will obviously reject any requests that do overlap. But you can submit multiples. So you can see here, I've got a couple of pending requests. Are there any questions? What's that? Yeah, so there's some great documentation. Oh, I'll jump back to the slide real quick. So the documentation can be found at aka.ms/Azure PIM. Oh, absolutely, yeah. 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 Yes. Yeah, so the question was about logging. There is sometimes a delay in logging, right? Yeah, so say that again? Yeah. So from an audit logging perspective, there's like about a 10-minute delay for those activities to show up within the Azure portal or within the audit logs themselves. So the audit logging team is working diligently on trying to improve that particular process. So one of the things that PIM does today is it sends email notifications right away. So when a user activates, administrators get those email notifications that said so-and-so activated this privileged role. So that's immediate. So you get that notification right away. And then like I mentioned, and like you mentioned, 10 minutes is about the average right now. But that is improving. And so they're working really hard to do that. We're also going to be surfacing a lot of our content directly in that new and improved Azure reporting capabilities as well. So now you'll have a filter category within Azure, within the Audit and Reporting Center, where you'll have the capability to select PIM as a resource provider, and it'll show all the PIM data from that as well. And you'll be able to send that to your SIEM or whatever processor that you want. And I know that you didn't ask this, but I'm sure it's a question that a lot of you are wondering, which is about Exchange activation. So when I activate the Exchange administrator's role, sometimes there's a delay. And so we are addressing that as well this month. So we've got a limited preview going on right now, but we'll be rolling that out to the broader environment very shortly here, so that Exchange will actually be real time. So you activate within PIM, and you'll immediately be active in Exchange. Yeah.
Does PIM require Azure AD Premium, or is it in standard?
It's a part of Azure AD Premium P2 SKU. So it's either Azure AD Premium P2 or Enterprise Mobility and Security E5. So those two SKUs include PIM. It also includes access reviews, which is a feature a new feature as well, which not only can you do reviews of roles, but you can also do reviews of apps and groups. So you can start a campaign. Let's say you have a VPN users group on premises that basically is a security group that you put a bunch of people in, and it gives them access to activate the VPN on their computer. And so regularly, you probably have to do a quarterly audit of all the people that can gain access to your corporate network. And so you can use access reviews to basically do that quarterly audit. And they have reoccurrence as well. So you can configure it to run every quarter, and it'll automatically kick off, and all those people will have to self-attest that they still need access, or they can say, I don't need access anymore, and then you can go and clean those users off of that group. So it includes that. It also includes identity protection and a few other things as well. So there's a lot that's included in that P2 SKU. Any other questions?
Is there a way to enforce MFA for Azure admins?
Yes. Yeah. So you can do that multiple ways, but the way that you would do it in PIM for Azure essentially would be to go to role settings, and I go to roles, and within these roles I can choose, let's just say it's global administrator, right? That's the most common. So by turning on PIM today, we enforce multi-factor. So in order to activate this role, a user would have to succeed Azure MFA. Without PIM, you can use conditional access, and you can say users in a role would need to activate, would need to succeed multi-factor authentication when they log into an environment, or when they log into the Azure portal. Conditional access is a part of Azure AD, the Premium 1 SKU. So it's the lower level SKU between just standard Azure. I'll have to double check, but or refer to my colleagues, but I'm not sure on that one. Yeah, the booth can answer that. Any other questions? Cool. Thanks very much for coming.